Welcome to The Bluegrass Story, the podcast that takes you on a captivating journey behind the mic with the most talented and influential artists in the world of bluegrass music. In each episode, we dive deep into the lives and careers of bluegrass musicians, exploring the stories that shaped their artistry and the passion that fuels their love for this timeless genre. Now, here's your host, Don Mack.
Today, I am truly honored to welcome one of the most respected voices in bluegrass music, IBMA Broadcaster of the Year, Terry Baucom. Cindy has spent her life celebrating, preserving, and elevating this music we all love. And now she adds a brand new title to her incredible list of accomplishments, children's book author. Her debut book, Solomon Simon, Dogman Jack, is a heartfelt tribute to her late husband, the legendary Terry Baucom, whose music, humor, and giant-hearted spirit touched so many lives. This story is a beautiful way to honor his memory and introduce a new generation to the joy and imagination he inspired. We're talking about the book, the creative journey behind it, and Cindy's remarkable career in bluegrass. I hope you enjoy this very special conversation with Terry Baucom. Hello, Cindy, and welcome to the Bluegrass Story. It is so good to have you here, and thank you for your time today.
Dawn, thank you. I really appreciate the invitation. I've been looking forward to talking with you.
Yeah, same here. I've been wanting to talk to you for a while because I know for the longest time now I've been running Knee Deep in Bluegrass and Knee Deep in Bluegrass Gospel on the Bluegrass Planet Radio. But, you know, I heard that you had this book coming out and I was like, you know what? We've got to do it. We've got to make some time. And it's just been such a crazy busy time, but so glad to have you here. So thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, thank you. And I'm very excited that the book is finally available. You know, it's been a process. Of course, losing my husband, Terry Baucom, was just, such a devastating thing. And I saw really, really early that I needed to turn my grief into something positive and see what I could do to not only occupy my time, but hopefully help others in the process. And the result is the new children's book.
Yes, for sure. And before we get into the book, I wanted to kind of start with the heart behind it. And you just kind of touched on that. But what was the moment when you realized that telling Solomon Simon, Dogman Jack's story was the way you wanted to honor Terry's legacy and keep his spirit close for future generations?
Well, this dog loves to go on long walks. And those long walks over the past couple of years have been very therapeutic for me. And I live in an area where we have plenty of walking trails and a beautiful park with a walking trail there. And so I was walking him one day and these little rhymes started coming to my head. And I thought, well, that's pretty neat. And I would take out my phone and type those lines that I'd thought of. And then a few days later, maybe another rhyming thought pertaining to the dog and Terry's relationship would come to mind. And after I had several of those saved in the Notes app on my phone, one night I wasn't able to sleep and I was thinking, well, should I get up and do something? I felt like I needed to be productive or something since I couldn't sleep. And I happened to remember all those notes I had assembled in my phone. So I turned on the light and got a notebook and pen, opened up my phone, and starting to see if I could assemble those in some way that made some sort of story. And I was really happy with the outcome. And then I got to thinking, could this be a book? Then I started thinking about illustrators and who could be the illustrator that could really capture Terry's personality. And for the longest time, I struggled with that. And I actually reached out to a few children's book illustrators and gave them my idea, and they were, very, very, schedule oriented. Oh, I can get to that in the next 6 months, or, I'll put you on my list. And I got to thinking that's so very impersonal. And then I thought of the award-winning illustrator, Grace Van Hoff. And of course, we know Grace's music through Chris Jones and the Night Drivers. She's a wonderful banjo player and harmony singer. And of course, she worked with Bill and the Bells and just so talented. And I thought, she is so busy. It's like you and I talked earlier off the air. It's just so busy. Everybody just stays so busy. And I thought there's probably no way that she would be able to even undertake this project. But I'm going to reach out and see if she's interested, because I knew that she knew Terry. She had been around him enough and knew his work that she could really put something special into the illustrations. And thankfully, when I reached out to her, she was thrilled to participate in the project. And I have been thrilled with her illustrations in the book. It just really brings it to life.
And, as I'm listening, you share that. And thank you, by the way. It almost seems perfectly fitting that she was selected as your illustrator for the book because of her connection to Bluegrass, and you know her and she knew Terry. And it just, it's a blessing that none of those other illustrators, they were so impersonal, and that they took you on, because you might have gone a different path.
I agree. Yes, that is 100% correct. And Grace being a banjo player, it is just very fitting. And I just feel like Terry would be so proud of this effort, not only because of the focus of the book, but the mission behind it. And that mission is raising funds for Lewy Body Dementia research, which that's what took Terry back in 2023. And our journey through Lewy Body Dementia is one that, if this story can help families who have members who might have dementia or some other similar cognitive issue going on, if it will help them and bring awareness to the disease, but also raise money for research. And then the other part of that mission is to help deserving animals find their forever home, because Solomon, Simon, Dogman Jack, and I have just settled on Simon. I call him Simon for short. They still call him Solomon when he goes to the vet, but I call him Simon. But Simon has just he came into our family knowing what his gig was. He was the most loving, nurturing little fella. And through Terry's journey of Lewy Body Dementia, he provided so much comfort and support, and it really helped. And I thought, well, this might help families know that bringing a dog into the home can provide a comfort and some loving support. And there are so many dogs in shelters that need homes. And so really, my mission is threefold: keeping Terry's memory and musical legacy sustained, and helping raise awareness and funds for Lewy Body Dementia and animal shelter adoption.
Well, and that is just amazing how we kind of always don't know the bigger plan until after the plan is revealed, so to speak. And what kind of impact has Simon had on you since Terry passed?
Oh, wow. I really don't know what I would do without him, because it's like once we lost Terry, he became my little companion. And, there were days where I might have just stayed inside and not gotten out to get fresh air and sunshine. But he's at the door. He's a jumper, and he will jump up and down at the door until I put the leash on him and we start down the street on our walk. And so he has been such a help to me, to motivate me to get out and get moving. And then, he's always at my side. He'll sit with me on the couch or in my chair, and he's just a sweet little guy, and everybody that comes here just loves him. Recently, Wayne and Kristen Scott Benson came, and he and Kristen just formed a quick bond, and it's just really great to see him interact with people that come here, and especially people that knew Terry, and they're like, oh, I can see how special he is. And he really is. And, you know, friends and family have just been so supportive through this journey. It's been a process, and it's still, you know, something that, you know, I'll always carry Terry in my heart, of course. And it's been a process working through the grief. And I try to always wind up at a place of gratitude. We were together 23 years, and I'm just so thankful that we got to share our lives together and so much music and get to travel together. And he was just the coolest, most non-confrontational human I had ever been around. That cool, laid-back demeanor that you saw at bluegrass festivals or on stage, that's how he was all the time. And I will forever be grateful for our time together. And I'm hoping that through the book, we can introduce his music to other people who may not know. And I'm really thankful to Ricky Skaggs, who provided the foreword for the book. And the foreword is really a tribute to Terry that Ricky wrote. And there's a great illustration that Grace did of Terry and Ricky together. And you'll also see some other familiar bluegrass faces in there: Jerry Douglas, Doyle Lawson, Jamie Daly, all people that had connections to Terry. But the story is told from the perspective of the dog, and how he got all of his names, because as Terry's memory was fading and he couldn't remember the dog's name, he would just give him another one and another one. But there was always a reason behind it. But the cool thing is, regardless of what name Terry called, the dog was right there at his side, because he recognized his voice and he knew he was being summoned. And so he knew that it was the disease and not Terry to blame. And I hope that that's what young family members can realize if they notice their grandparents or an aunt or an uncle or someone going through an illness and they wonder why they're acting differently. I hope that they'll realize sometimes diseases do things to our bodies and our brains that we have no control over. But just like Solomon, Simon, Dogman Jack, you're still there for that person anytime they need you.
Yeah. And I mean, it's just, I think this is such an incredible thing that you've done, Cindy, because writing a children's book, first and foremost, it's going to appeal to children, but there's so many lessons that can be garnered from this story. And of course, being incredibly personal for you, you know, being about Terry and the dog. And it's just really a sweet story, it sounds like. And what part of this story feels like the truest reflection of Terry?
Oh, wow. Let's see. I have a book here in front of me. There is, let me turn to one portion here, and I'll read you a little excerpt that, I'll read you a couple of pages here.
Okay.
And so again, it's from the dog's perspective. When I left the shelter with Terry that spring, my name there was Solomon, you know, like the king. But as days went by, Terry's words got crossed. He wanted to call me, but my name was lost. So he started calling me Simon, a name close to the other, and more names were coming, as I would soon discover. Sometimes Terry looked at me and simply said, dog. Then he would ask, why are my thoughts all in a fog? Before dementia got in the way, hey man is something Terry would say. So when I heard hey man, to his side I would scurry. I'm right here, Terry. There's no need to worry. That's a portion from the book right there.
Oh, wow. That almost choked me up listening to it. It's so sweet, but I think it's just so incredibly clever the way you've written it from the dog's perspective, because children love animals. And I just think that the message in this story that can be conveyed from a dog's perspective to children is going to be so much more meaningful. And it's a conversation that I think children can have with their parents long after they've read the book, to talk about dementia and loved ones that may be in their own lives that have it.
Right, for sure. And that is my hope. And it's a beautiful little book. It's a hardcover, and it's 8.5 by 8.5. So a hardcover square book. And again, with the illustrations that Grace has provided and the story within, it's something that I'm really proud of. And I know it was divine intervention, Simon coming into our lives in the first place. Terry and I had always had a dog in our home. And when we lost the last dog we had, he was 14, and it had been a couple of years since we had had a dog at that point. But after Terry's diagnosis, he started saying, I think it's time we get a dog again. And I said, oh, that's a great idea. So we started visiting shelters at that point, and we went to several, and it just, we didn't see one that we really felt like was the best fit. And then whenever we met Simon, it was just like, boom, here he is. And I think that God put him in our lives. And I even asked at the animal shelter, about him. And they said, small, good-natured dogs usually find a home the first day. And it's the older, larger dogs we have trouble with. But he's been here for 11 days. So I feel like he was just waiting on us to come get him. Yeah. So I really do feel like there was a purpose in the journey that we went through. And if I can use that sad time in my life to find purpose and meaning and help Terry's music live on and his memory live on and help these other organizations, then that will make my heart happy.
Oh, absolutely. And speaking of Terry, and honoring him, he left such a legendary mark on Bluegrass. And what do you think people might be surprised to learn about him beyond the stage and the banjo?
Oh, my goodness. I'll tell you one of the first things that surprised me about him when he and I first started dating. He enjoyed watching the Food Network. And I'm like, do you want me to turn it? Oh, no, I'm watching this. I'm learning this recipe. He loved Rachel Ray. And I'm like, this is hilarious. Well, a lot of times I would be working late. And when I would come in, he would have dinner prepared. And he was the best cook, and he loved grilling outside. He loved making potato salad. He loved making homemade bread. And so a lot of people might not realize how talented he was in the kitchen.
So he not only was an immense talent on the banjo and in the bluegrass world, but who knew he was such an awesome cook off stage, and you got to benefit of that quite a bit. So
yes,
that's awesome.
I miss his cooking. I miss his cooking.
I am so sure.
Oh my goodness, yeah. But just talented in a lot of areas. But I think one thing that I'm most proud of is everybody that approaches me who either met him one time or was around him a lot of times, they always tell me it was always a positive experience and how much they enjoyed being around him. And I've never heard a negative word about him. And that makes me really happy to know that when people remember him, it's in such a beautiful way.
Yeah, he undoubtedly was just a wonderful human being, and one that his legacy just is going to live on, and will never be forgotten, for sure, just by what he contributed to the world of bluegrass, but also just who he was as a person. And when you can leave that kind of mark, after you're gone, that speaks volumes. It really does.
Well, it does. And, and I haven't shared this with a ton of people, but Lewy body dementia is something that once it sets in, it's not just a steady decline. It's a real roller coaster. There would be days that Terry was almost himself, just a really normal day. And then there would be days of severe hallucinations or paranoia or physically be struggling. But even just a few days before he passed, 4 or 5 days before he passed, he looked at me from the bed. I was at his bedside, and he said, "Cindy, I am so lucky." And I said, "Bauc, what makes you lucky?" And he said, "I got to go through life doing what I wanted to do, and music let me see so much of the world, and music helped me make so many friends. And a lot of people don't get to do that in their life, but I did." And then Terry and Keith Whitley were good friends, and he even mentioned Keith in that conversation, and he said, "Look how young he was when he passed." And then he mentioned a bass player that worked with Boone Creek in the early days, Tommy Huff, and Tommy had gotten killed in a motorcycle wreck at age 27. And he said, "Look at Huff and look at Keith. They were so young and had their lives in front of them, but I just turned 71. I got to live out my life." And to look back on his life the way he did with gratitude at that point, that brought me a lot of peace.
Oh, I'm sure. And it obviously he was at peace in the end, and to have the presence of mind even that close to his final day is just a gift. Is just a gift from above to be able for him to acknowledge that and share that with you too. And he was absolutely lucky. He was so fortunate to have a long life of doing what he loved,
Yeah. From the time he graduated high school, he was hired professionally by Charlie Moore, and his first professional gigs were the Grand Ole Opry and the Ernest Tubb Midnight Jamboree, and he was playing fiddle with Charlie Moore at that point before Boone Creek formed, and then Doyle Lawson and Quicksilver, and all the bands that really made an impact in bluegrass. And I've looked at Terry's bands individually where he worked, and I thought, if he did nothing more than the original Doyle Lawson and Quicksilver and all those great songs that made such an impact on the music scene, his legacy would be well cemented in time. But from there, he did go on to do so many other things. Founding member of Third Time Out, Lou Reed, Terry Baucom in Carolina, Blue Ridge, and then, of course, the last 10 years of his career leading his own band, Terry Baucom's Dukes of Drive, and recording 6 projects of his own. And it was just such a wonderful thing to get to be in the studio with him, not only selecting the songs that were going to be recorded, but helping produce those in the studio. And I'm just grateful for that time with him and all that great music and all those wonderful memories that we shared.
Absolutely. And you have been very fortunate indeed as well. Now, I cannot conclude this interview without talking a little bit about your own career because, as an IBMA Broadcaster of the Year many times, and just what you have contributed yourself to bluegrass music. You've been a pillar in bluegrass broadcasting for decades. And when you look back, what has been the most rewarding part of using your platform to champion this music and its artist?
Oh, wow. So many things. But, you know how it is, Dawn, when you have a passion for it, you just want as many people to listen as you can get their attention. So when I was in high school, well, let me back up a little further. Growing up, I grew up in the very northwest corner of North Carolina, Ashe County, and a lot of great musicians in that area. My dad played music, built instruments, so I was always around it. Some of my earliest memories are going to Wayne Henderson's guitar shop and watching him build guitars, and going to bluegrass festivals and fiddlers conventions and singing with my dad, and then learning to play instruments. So I just loved it. And looking back at festivals where I first got to meet Lester Flatt when I was 11, and Jimmy Martin, and be around these first generation pioneering artists, I thought, how can I get more people to listen to this? And when I was 17, I approached the radio station in my hometown about just assisting their bluegrass person on the air with facts and helping select music. And they were like, "Oh, why don't we just train you to do that show?" And I thought, okay, that'll be fun. You like to gather people around to listen to this new song or that new song. I thought, if I'm on the radio, I can be playing the new songs to a lot of people at one time. And I was going to do that for, a little while because it was fun, until I figured out what it was I was supposed to do. And so when I graduated from high school, I was actually going to go on into a broadcasting curriculum in college. And my boss at the time, who owned the radio station, he said, "I will hire you full time. I will teach you every area of broadcasting." And at the time, he was the president of the North Carolina Association of Broadcasters. And I thought, well, this is a unique opportunity to learn on the job and have a full-time job right out of high school. So I accepted the job, but I did take college classes at night, English classes, psychology classes, things that I thought would help me in my job, creative writing. So I did Wilkes Community College at night, worked full-time during the day, played music with my dad on the weekends. And, I either figured out early what it was I wanted to do, or I'm still trying to figure it out, because I've been doing this now for 42 years.
Cindy, I mean, first of all, it doesn't seem like you've been doing it that long, because you certainly, you're just a pillar of youth. Oh. You don't age. You don't age. You. So when you say 42 years, I'm like, what? But you just said that this started in high school. So, that's incredible. And I mean, it's just interesting to me how your journey has just been laid out, and it's led you into all the places that you've been, the things you've done. You met Terry, you got married, and you now are a published author. And, I've often said that when you look at your life in reverse, you clearly see how all the dots connect, and how God he preordains like the way your life is going to go, even though we always have our best laid plans. And sometimes when we take a different path, we wonder, well, but it isn't until you kind of look back that you see how it was all supposed to work out the way it does. And I think you're no exception. But I think what makes you so special for the world of bluegrass is that you have contributed so much to this profession and to this industry, and you've been a mainstay. I mean, you're a voice that people recognize. You're hired to MC festivals. Everybody knows who you are. And it's just incredible what you've been able to contribute and do, and the support that you've given the music and the artists, which is most important to keep it alive and well in an industry that sometimes has wavered and has, we've wondered, how was it going to go? And it just continues to evolve. And speaking of evolving, in your profession and your years in the industry, it's changing. We're seeing a lot of new things that are being introduced into bluegrass, and the tradition is always going to be there. But what do you, in your purview, see it evolving to? Like, where do you see bluegrass heading next?
Well, Mike Bubb and I had a conversation not too long ago because we're the same age. And we talked about how lucky we are that we got to meet so many of the first generation pioneering artists, but also we're getting to see what's happening in the genre today. Mm-hmm. And sort of like right in the middle of it. We can look down the road, we can look up the road. And I always compare it to a tree. The roots of the tree are those first generation pioneering artists like Bill Monroe and Jim and Jesse, Jimmy Martin, Flatt and Scruggs, the Stanley Brothers. And those are the roots. That is the foundation. And that tree's going to grow and it's going to branch out. And it's going to branch out because the world changes. When people write songs, people with the early bluegrass songs, they were writing about what they were dealing with in those days, living in cabins, children getting sick and passing away as babies, missing home, missing mama. I mean, now as people live different lives, the new songs that are being written, of course, they're going to be relevant to what's going on in the world today. Mm-hmm. So I think when that tree branches out, that is a good thing, because if a tree is branching out and growing, it means the roots are strong. That's but right. If you have people that want to cut off the branches every time something new sprouts out, eventually that's going to cause the roots to die also. That's so right. I think we celebrate the new talent by supporting them and realizing that they're helping people look back to those earlier influences. If you go and listen to any of today's really top bluegrass artists who are drawing huge crowds, they're very respectful of those people they learn from, and they play those songs so that their new audience can get a taste of what traditional bluegrass is. And I think it's wonderful.
It is. And I am really, that is so well said and described, because it is so true. And one of the things personally for me as a broadcaster and proprietor of Bluegrass Planet Radio is the fact that you've got so much young talent that they're up and coming. They have kind of gotten hooked on bluegrass when once upon a time it wasn't the case. So it's so exciting to see we've got a brand new generation of artists that are coming up that are going to carry it forward and be able to keep that foundation in place, because I have yet to see a young up-and-coming artist that doesn't pay tribute to the forefathers of bluegrass music and the respect, as you said, and just trying to incorporate some of the traditional stuff in with what they're doing, which resonates with young and old fans alike. So I think it's moving in the right direction. And as with anything, there's always going to be change, but it depends on how change is embraced and what you do with that change that determines, the mainstay, the sustaining of it. And so I'm excited to see where we are. It feels like, since I started my broadcasting career, it's not quite 2 decades now, but it feels like it sometimes. But, just to see where bluegrass was when I started and where it is today, and how it's just been this continual evolution and explosion of bluegrass music. I think it's more popular today than it's ever been. And the fans are lifelong fans. They're not just fans for a time like you see in other genres of music. It doesn't ebb and flow. It's continuous. And I think the thing that makes our industry so special is the fact that the artists are not out of touch. Like, the Bluegrass Festival, they're out there picking in the jam sessions, at night, and they're just in touch with the folks, and they're reachable, and people really, really, it resonates with people and they appreciate it a great deal. And I think that's a special thing about our industry.
It is. It is. The artists are so accessible, and the young people coming up that you talked about, they use technology to their advantage in learning. When my dad was coming up, he used to tell me he would go and help Flat and Scruggs carry their instruments into the schoolhouse so he could sit on the front row and watch Earl's fingers and get home and try to remember as much as he could. Well, today with YouTube and all these online streaming sources, a young player can watch a solo over and over and over and learn from that and have access to the best teachers in the world. When a lot of the artists are not in a heavy touring season, so many of them will teach online. And I think that's one reason we're seeing so many young people who are just really, really good, because they do have access to those great teachers and great videos that they can learn from. And I'm happy they take advantage of that. And you're right. There was a time just a few years ago when I was starting to get worried. It's like you'd go to IBMA World of Bluegrass and it's like, wow, where are all the young people? Or you'd be at a bluegrass festival and say, wow, where are all the young people? And now they are coming back. And it's so great to see. And at this past IBMA World of Bluegrass in Chattanooga, there were so many young people in jam sessions and playing on the youth stage, and they're really, really good. And one thing that you mentioned too about how, people, once they get into this music, it's something they're committed to. It's a lifelong thing. And I'm very thankful for friends that I made when I was a teenager who are still friends today. And when I see them at festivals or we're working the same places, like Ronnie Bowman and Alan Bybee, Sean Lane, Jason Burleson, those were the people that I got acquainted with early and started jamming with early. And those friendships that you carry with you through the decades, and to see what everyone has been able to accomplish because they were so passionate about the music when they were young. And it's just a great thing. Bluegrass is just a wonderful, enjoyable thing that if you have it in your life, you know how good it feels. And if you don't have it in your life, I feel sorry for you. And I hope that you will soon get there.
Look, I am a classic example of someone who grew up, kind of in that pop music 80s kind of girl. And I remember, I was dating someone way back in the day, and he was diehard bluegrass. He took me to a local bluegrass festival. I've never been, but I was hooked from that point forward. I was so impressed with the artist on stage, realizing, they don't have all these bells and whistles like in a production studio. They're out there. This is sheer talent. And I was blown away. I couldn't believe how good it was. And I was hooked from that point forward, and have been ever since. And so it's not just that it gets in people's blood. It's just something that is so personal. I think people, not only they can just relate to the music because of the stories that are told, and the artists are so humble and genuine, and there's nothing fake about bluegrass music. And I think you can't find that in any other genre. Bluegrass is standalone in that way. And people like authenticity, especially now more than ever. And I'm just encouraged to see all the young people who are, finding that bluegrass is their jam, so to speak, pun intended. And it's become a wonderful, wonderful thing to see. Like you, I was also concerned some years ago going, oh no, and there was also a lot of talk out there about, is it dying? Is it, and thank goodness we've had some artists that have just exploded that are selling out full arenas and I mean, and it's resonating with the young generation like never before. So,
and bluegrass is such a beautiful art form. And I think
yeah,
sometimes it takes seeing it in person to really appreciate that.
yeah,
Maybe hearing it isn't, it doesn't grab your attention as much as when you're watching someone hold their instrument and seeing what they're doing.
mhm.
It's just a beautiful art form. And I think a lot of people who might have been casual listeners, they really get involved once they start supporting live music and seeing it in person.
Absolutely. Well, before we wrap up, I have to ask, are you planning to write any other books?
Well, you never know. They always say life starts a step outside your comfort zone.
Yep.
And a few years ago, I would have never thought I would have written a children's book, but it's been such a great process. And I have had some ideas rolling around in my head where, Solomon Simon, Dogman Jack, he could go on some adventures. He could start going to bluegrass festivals, and it might be a way to introduce other artists or other venues through his experiences. So who knows? I'm never going to say never,
That's right.
But
and the other thing I was going to say is with you being the veteran bluegrass, broadcaster that you are, I mean, you've got stories for days that you could put into a book or two, and people would enjoy reading them. So I really hope this is not going to be your only book. Honestly, I think you've started something that is just not going to be a once and done. I hope not, anyway. But we'll see.
We'll see. We'll see. I do stay very busy, but I love being productive and busy, and helping to spread the word of bluegrass far and wide. And I appreciate this opportunity. And of course, all the information about the book is on my social media pages or on my website, kneedeepinbluegrass.com, if you'd like to learn more.
Well, Cindy, this has been an honor. And I will say, I know Terry is smiling down at you and what you have done with this book, and he's just proud of you in general and always has been. And so it's exciting to see that you're now an author. You can add author to your long resume of things you've accomplished. And it's just been an honor to speak with you about your book and your career and all things bluegrass. So thank you for the time.
Oh, Dawn, thank you. I really appreciate the invitation. And it was so much fun chatting with you. And thanks for everything that you do through Bluegrass Planet Radio. And I know, like me, you're passionate about the music, and that comes through. So thanks for all you do and for this chance to get to chat.
Same here. Thank you so much, Cindy. And have a wonderful holiday season because it's upon us.
It is indeed. You too. Take care.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye. What a meaningful and inspiring conversation. A huge thank you to Cindy Baucom for joining me and for sharing the heart behind Solomon Simon Dogman Jack. It's a beautiful tribute to Terry and a gift to families everywhere. If you'd like to order the book, support Cindy's work, or learn more about her projects, be sure to check out kneedeepinbluegrass.com for ordering information and details. Thank you for listening. And as always, keep supporting bluegrass, keep lifting up the stories behind the music, and keep feeding your bluegrass soul.
You've been listening to The Bluegrass Story, a production of BluegrassPlanetRadio.com. We hope you've enjoyed this insightful journey into the world of bluegrass music and its captivating stories. Remember, you can tune in to The Bluegrass Story anytime on demand on all major streaming platforms. Keep the bluegrass spirit alive, and thank you for joining us.